Dr. Zenna Blackwood stared at the holographic warning floating above her desk for the 47th time that day, not that she was counting. Well, okay, she totally was counting, because apparently being a primitive species meant she had nothing better to do than tally up how many times the Galactic Council tried to remind her of her place in the universe. Warning: dimensional research strictly prohibited by order of the Galactic Council. Violation penalty: planetary quarantine. Oh look, she muttered to her AI assistant Aria 7. Our daily reminder that we're too stupid to play with the big kid's toys. She flicked her wrist, sending the hologram spinning into the corner of her underground lab. How many times do you think they'll flash that at us before they realize we can, read? Based on current patterns, Aria 7's melodic voice responded, approximately never. The Thoraxians still send pictographic warnings to the Centaurians, and they achieved spaceflight 3 centuries ago. Fantastic. Zenna ran her fingers through her silver-streaked black hair, a premature aging gift from years of quantum physics research that the Council deemed too dangerous for primates. The irony that they used quantum technology to send their patronizing warnings wasn't lost on her. The lab, hidden beneath what officially appeared as a banana storage facility, because apparently the aliens' sense of humor was about as sophisticated as their respect for humanity, hummed with the gentle pulse of forbidden equipment. The Council had graciously allowed Earth to join the galactic community after humans had stumbled upon faster-than-light travel, or as Ambassador NX Illa had put it, managed not to blow themselves up playing with physics. Dr. Blackwood Aria 7 chimed. Councillor Zrylax's weekly inspection drone is approaching the facility. Oh joy, time for our regularly scheduled patronizing. Zenna quickly activated the quantum field dampeners, disguised as climate controls for the bananas. How many times do you think he'll mention our fascinating primitive advancement today? The drone, an iridescent sphere that somehow managed to look condescending despite lacking a face, floated through the holographic wall. It projected the blue-skinned, multiple-eyed visage of Councillor Zrylax, who managed to look down his nose at her despite being a hologram. Ah, Dr. Blackwood, he trilled, his translator making his voice sound like a mix between a patronizing kindergarten teacher and a squeaky toy. I trust you're maintaining your, what do you call it? Ah yes, fruit preservation facility. Actually, Zenna replied with a saccharine smile, we've expanded to include quantum harmonic banana ripening. Very primitive stuff, really. Wouldn't want to bore you with the details. How charming. Zrylax's upper eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of amusement among his species. It's so refreshing to see humans embracing their natural affinity for such appropriate technologies. Why, just yesterday in the council chamber, we were discussing Earth's remarkable progress with simple tools. Zenna bit back a retort about how those simple tools had already reversed-engineered half the restricted technology the council used to monitor Earth. Instead, she maintained her smile, channeling what her colleague Dr. Raj Patel called her inner retail worker. We do try our best to make you proud, Councillor. It's not easy, what with our opposable thumbs and all. Sometimes we accidentally build quantum computers while trying to peel bananas. The sarcasm flew right over Zrylax's multiple heads. Yes, very good. Keep up the excellent work with your fruit. The Council is quite pleased with Earth's compliance regarding dimensional research restrictions. We'd hate to see such a promising young species, he paused dramatically, slip up. As the drone departed, Zenna waited exactly 30 seconds before dropping her head onto her desk with a thunk. Aria, please tell me the quantum barrier field held. The drone detected nothing beyond approved technology levels for primates, Doctor. Though I believe Councillor Zrylax set a new personal record today, 17 variations of primitive in a 3-minute conversation. Wonderful. Make a note, need to work on our simple tool to pierce the dimensional veil and show these condescending cosmic bureaucrats exactly what these space monkeys can do. She straightened up, a dangerous glint in her eyes. And Aria. Order more bananas. Apparently we've got a reputation to maintain. Behind a hidden panel, complex equations scrolled across a screen, each one another piece in the puzzle that would soon shatter the Council's most sacred rule. Because if there was one thing the Galactic Council had yet to learn, it was that telling humans they couldn't do something was the surest way to guarantee they'd not only do it but document the whole process in a peer-reviewed paper just to rub it in. Tell me again, Dr. Blackwood said, staring at the quantum entanglement readings that definitely shouldn't exist, why this is impossible. Dr. Raj Patel glanced up from his workstation, where he'd been pretending to analyze banana ripeness patterns for the benefit of the Council's surveillance. Because according to the great and mighty Kykes Thor, And I quote, "The primitive synaptic structures of the human brain cannot possibly comprehend the fundamental constants of dimensional physics." He affected a nasal, pompous tone that made the alien scientist sound like a snobbish butler with a head cold. Right, Zenna grinned as she adjusted the quantum resonance field. The same Kykes Thor who's giving a lecture at the Galactic Science Academy today about why humans should stick to studying our own belly buttons. That's the one. Though I believe his exact words were navel-gazing seems more appropriate for species still fascinated by their own digestive processes. The hidden laboratory hummed with energy as dozens of quantum processors disguised as banana weighing stations crunched numbers that would make any council observer have a collective aneurysm. The underground human research network, dubbed Operation Monkey Business. Because if they were going to be called primates, they might as well lean into it, had outposts in similar agricultural facilities across the globe. Aria 7, patch me into the Academy's feed. I want to hear this. Zenna adjusted her quantum scanner, carefully hidden inside what appeared to be a fruit freshness detector. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the blue-skinned, tentacle-headed Kykes Thor addressing a room full of various alien species. None of them were human, of course they weren't considered advanced enough to attend. And so you see, Kykes Thor was saying, his tentacles waving dismissively, the universal constant of dimensional integrity cannot be violated. It's quite simple, really, though perhaps not to some. A ripple of condescending laughter swept through the audience. Simple, he says, Dr. Patel muttered, typing rapidly. Simple like the way we simply isolated quantum particles in a banana skin matrix because they wouldn't let us have proper containment equipment. Zenna was only half listening. The quantum scanner had picked up something extraordinary, a pattern in the dimensional fabric that nobody was supposed to be able to detect, let alone manipulate. She said slowly, remember how they said the universal constant was unbreakable because it required simultaneous manipulation of quantum states across multiple dimensional planes? Yeah, right after they patted us on the head and suggested we stick to studying primate social dynamics. What if Zenna's fingers flew across her console, entering calculations? What if the reason nobody's broken it is that they're all thinking too perfectly? They're trying to create perfect quantum symmetry across dimensions. But what if the key is controlled chaos? On screen, Kykes Thor was still droning on. ... which is why we've restricted certain species from pursuing this research. It's for their own protection, really. Imagine giving dimensional manipulation technology to a species that still finds amusement in throwing small rubber spheres at each other. The underground labs network lit up as other hidden facilities began receiving Zenna's calculations. Dr. Yuki Tanaka in Tokyo responded first. Are you suggesting we intentionally introduce quantum irregularities? Better, Zenna replied, her eyes gleaming. I'm suggesting we use our messy, primitive monkey brain approach to physics. Instead of trying to achieve perfect dimensional harmony like they do, we embrace the chaos theory they think we're too stupid to understand. Dr. Marcus Cruz's voice crackled from the Rio facility. You mean weaponize our supposedly inferior understanding of quantum mechanics? That's brilliantly petty. I'm in. The next few hours were a blur of calculations, adjustments, and increasingly excited messages from research facilities around the globe. While Kykes Thor continued his lecture about the limitations of primitive species, the supposedly impossible was taking shape in labs disguised as fruit storage units worldwide. Quantum resonance peaked, Dr. Aisha Ibrahim announced from the Cairo facility. Dimensional fluctuation patterns are, holy shit, they're stabilizing. That's impossible, Kykes Thor's voice droned from the feed. The universal constant clearly states. He was cut off by a gasp from Dr. Patel. In the center of their lab, reality itself seemed to hiccup. A small, swirling portal hung in the air, breaking pretty much every law of physics the Council held sacred. Did we just, Zenna started, create a stable dimensional breach, using quantum chaos theory and a bunch of equipment disguised as banana monitoring devices? Raj finished. Yes, we did. Take that, you tentacled tutorial dispenser. The portal hummed softly, its edges rippling with what the Council would probably call incredibly dangerous and irresponsible dimensional energies, but which looked suspiciously like success. All facilities reporting similar results, Aria 7 announced. Dimensional breaches are stable and maintaining quantum coherence through controlled chaos parameters. Zenna couldn't help herself. She grabbed the lab's communication system and patched into the Academy's feed. Question for the esteemed Dr. Kykes Thor, she said, causing the alien scientist to stop mid-pontificate. How do you explain this? She transmitted the quantum readings but not the visual of the portal itself, because some surprises were worth saving to the Academy's main display. The data showed clear evidence of what the Council had deemed impossible. The silence that followed was, as humans would say, bananas. Kykes tentacles went rigid with shock as he processed the readings. This is clearly a mistake. No primitive species could possibly. Oh, but we could, Zenna interrupted, enjoying herself perhaps a bit too much. Turns out all that navel-gazing helped us spot something you missed. Would you like a banana while you process that? We have plenty. The Academy erupted into chaos as the implications set in. In labs across Earth, scientists were high-fiving, hugging, and in Dr. Cruz's case, doing what he called his quantum victory dance. Dr. Blackwood Aria 7 interjected, "I'm detecting multiple Council vessels entering Earth's orbit. I believe we may have their attention." Good, Zenna replied, watching the portal shimmer. "Because I think it's time for the space monkeys to show them what we can really do." In the background, Cakes Thor was still sputtering about impossibilities and constants, but nobody was listening anymore. The humans had just broken the universe's biggest rule, and they'd done it with equipment hidden in fruit storage facilities. If that wasn't a cosmic middle finger to the Council's condescension, Zenna didn't know what was. The emergency session of the Galactic Council looked like a cosmic circus had collided with a bureaucratic nightmare. Representatives from 100 species crammed into the massive chamber, their various appendages gesticulating wildly as they argued about the monkey problem. Order. "I will have order." Admiral Vextral's voice boomed across the chamber, his crystalline form flashing angry shades of red. "We are facing an unprecedented crisis. These primates have violated the most sacred law of dimensional physics." Dr. Zenna Blackwood watched the feed from her lab, munching on a banana just to be petty. The Council hadn't bothered to cut Earth's observation access, probably because they didn't think humans were capable of understanding their advanced encryption. They'd broken that 2 weeks after joining the galactic community. The humans must be stopped. Councillor Zrylax was practically vibrating with anger. "We gave them simple tasks, appropriate responsibilities. We even let them maintain their quaint fruit storage facilities." "About those facilities," Dr. Patel muttered, monitoring the quantum breach readings. "Someone should really tell them what we've been doing with their approved technology." On screen, Kykes Thor was presenting evidence of human dimensional manipulation. His tentacles were tied in actual knots from stress. "As you can see, these primitives have somehow achieved quantum resonance across dimensional boundaries. They're using completely unorthodox methods. It's chaos, pure chaos." "Actually," Zenna announced, patching into the feed again, "we prefer to call it controlled entropy, with a side of monkey business much more scientific sounding, don't you think?" The Council chamber erupted into pandemonium. Ambassador NX Illa, who had always been slightly less condescending than her peers, stepped forward. "Dr. Blackwood, surely you understand the dangers. The universal constant exists for a reason." "Funny thing about that," Zenna replied, nodding to Dr. Tanaka in Tokyo. Across the globe, human research facilities simultaneously activated their dimensional breaches. "We've been going through your archived records. You really should use better passwords than Primitives Draw 123, and we found something interesting." Dr. Ibrahim's voice joined the transmission from Cairo. "The universal constant isn't a law of physics at all, is it? It's a cover-up." The silence in the Council chamber was deafening. Admiral Vextral's crystalline form had gone completely transparent, the equivalent of going pale for his species. "You banned dimensional research," Dr. Cruz added from Rio, "because you were afraid. Not of the technology itself, but of who might master it first." Zenna watched as the truth hit home. "You see, while we were supposedly too primitive to understand quantum physics, we were really good at pattern recognition. And there was a pattern in your historical records. Every time a lesser species got close to cracking dimensional travel, suddenly the universal constant became law." "This is outrageous," Kykes Thor sputtered. "You had no right to access those records." "Really?" Zenna raised an eyebrow. "Because according to page 1247 of the Galactic Charter, which you thought we couldn't read properly, member species have full access to historical archives. Did you think we were just looking at the pictures?" Multiple enforcement vessels were now entering Earth's atmosphere. They were immediately greeted by the sight of dimensional portals flickering into existence at every human research facility. Dr. Blackwood Aria 7 announced, "Council forces are attempting to establish containment fields around our facilities." "Let them try." Zenna nodded to her global team. "Show them what space monkeys can really do." Across the planet, human scientists activated what they dubbed the quantum banana split protocol. Each dimensional breach began generating controlled quantum fluctuations that completely disrupted the Council's containment technology. Impossible, an alien technician's voice crackled over the enforcement vessel's comm channels. Their quantum signatures they're completely chaotic. Our systems can't lock on. That's because you're still thinking in straight lines, Dr. Patel explained cheerfully. We embraced our primitive pattern-seeking monkey brains and figured out that sometimes the best way forward is to swing from branch to branch. On the Council feed, Ambassador NX Illa was hurriedly consulting ancient records. The prophecy, she whispered, the one about the species that would break the barriers. Oh, now this is interesting, Zenna leaned forward. There's a prophecy. Do tell. Silence, Admiral Vextrol thundered. That information is classified beyond. Found it, Dr. Cruz announced. It's in the sealed records we just cracked. Apparently there was a prediction about a young species that would see patterns in chaos and break the bonds of dimension through understanding that transcended order. They thought it would be the Arcturians. But then they developed a religion around mathematical perfection and sort of disqualified themselves. The council chamber had gone from panic to something approaching existential dread. Zenna almost felt bad for them. Almost. You don't understand what you've done, Kix Thor said, his tentacles drooping. The dimensional barriers. They protect us from change, Zenna suggested. From having to admit that maybe, just maybe, your perfect understanding of the universe isn't so perfect. Or from having to acknowledge that sometimes the best solutions come from those you've dismissed as primitive. The enforcement vessels were withdrawing, their containment systems thoroughly confused by human quantum chaos theory. In the council chamber, representatives were beginning to turn on each other. You said the humans wouldn't figure it out for millennia, one alien accused another. How was I supposed to know they'd use quantum irregularities? It's completely illogical. They hid a dimensional research program in fruit storage facilities. Who does that? Zenna stretched, enjoying the show. You know what the real irony is? If you'd actually helped us instead of patronizing us, we might have done this completely differently. But you were so convinced of our limitations that you never noticed our potential. The dimensional barriers must be maintained, Admiral Vextrol insisted. The chaos of unrestricted dimensional travel would what Dr. Ibrahim interrupted. Force you to adapt, to accept that the universe is bigger and stranger than your precious constants suggest, to admit that maybe those primitive species you love to dismiss might have something to contribute. The quantum breaches across Earth pulsed in perfect chaotic harmony, a demonstration of humanity's mastery over what the Council had deemed impossible. In labs disguised as banana storage facilities, human scientists celebrated their victory over bureaucratic condescension. So, Zenna addressed the stunned council. We can do this one of two ways. Either you recognize Earth as equals and work with us to explore dimensional physics properly, or we continue developing this technology on our own. Probably while hiding it in increasingly ridiculous agricultural facilities. Your choice. You would blackmail the Galactic Council, Zrylax demanded. Blackmail? No, Zenna peeled another banana thoughtfully. We prefer to call it aggressive technological cooperation. Sounds more diplomatic, don't you think? The council chambers erupted into frantic discussion. Humanity had not only broken their most sacred law, they'd done it with style, sarcasm, and snack fruit. The universe would never be the same. And somewhere in the quantum chaos, the patterns spelled out a simple truth: never underestimate a species that can turn fruit storage into dimensional physics. The massive quantum gateway hummed in the center of what used to be a banana storage facility, its swirling energies casting prismatic shadows across faces that couldn't quite contain their grins. Blackwood stood before the assembled Galactic Council delegation, who had finally deigned to visit Earth in person after the humans' ultimatum. As you can see, she gestured to the perfectly stable dimensional portal. We've managed to create what you claimed was impossible. And yes, before you ask, we're powering it with a quantum reactor disguised as an industrial banana ripening chamber. Kix Thor, who had been forced to come witness this primitive attempt at dimensional physics, was scanning the gateway with trembling tentacles. His scientific equipment, the best in the galaxy, was telling him something his superior alien brain refused to accept. This is, he sputtered, all four eyes wide. The quantum harmonics are deliberately asymmetrical. The dimensional resonance is fluctuating in controlled chaos patterns. You're violating every established principle of being boring, Dr. Patel suggested helpfully. Following rules that don't actually make sense. limiting ourselves to what you think we should be capable of. The gateway pulsed, its event horizon rippling like the surface of a cosmic pond. Through it, they could see other dimensions, realities that the Council had declared off-limits to lesser species. Admiral Vextral's crystalline form was cycling through colors, so rapidly he looked like a disco ball having an existential crisis. But our calculations proved this was impossible. The energy requirements alone should have what Zenna interrupted. Enjoying this far too much. Required your approved technology? Here's a fun fact: when you tell humans something's impossible, we don't hear "don't try this," we hear "find a way to do it" that nobody's thought of yet, preferably while being slightly ridiculous about it. Dr. Tanaka's voice came through the comm system, followed by his holographic image stepping through a similar gateway in Tokyo. The multi-dimensional network is stable, Dr. Blackwood. All sites reporting successful quantum synchronization through controlled chaos theory. You've created a network. Kike's Thor's tentacles tied themselves into a new knot of distress. But the power requirements are handled by what we call quantum probability surfing. Dr. Cruz's hologram appeared through another portal, technically joining them from Rio while simultaneously remaining in Brazil. Turns out if you stop trying to force quantum particles to behave perfectly, they're much more cooperative. Who knew? The Council representatives watched in horror and fascination as more scientists appeared through portals, their bodies briefly existing in multiple dimensions at once before stabilizing. Dr. Ibrahim's hologram waved cheerfully as she stepped through from Cairo, carrying what appeared to be. "Is that a banana split?" Zenna asked. Seemed appropriate. Ayesha grinned. "Want one? They taste better with a hint of quantum uncertainty." Kike's Thor was frantically reviewing the data from his scanners. His superior alien mind was being forced to accept something that shattered his entire worldview. The chaos. It's not random at all. You're using the natural quantum fluctuations to surf the dimensional waves, Zenna suggested. Yeah, turns out our primitive pattern recognition skills are pretty good at spotting the order in chaos. While you were trying to force the universe to follow your rules, we were learning to dance with its natural rhythms. The gateway network hummed in harmony, each portal maintaining stability through carefully controlled instability. It was elegant in its messiness, brilliant in its defiance of convention, and absolutely infuriating to everyone who had claimed it couldn't be done. The Council's authority on dimensional physics, Admiral Vextral began, is about as stable as a quantum particle, Zenna finished. Which, as we've demonstrated, is actually quite stable if you stop trying to tell it what to do and start working with its natural tendencies. Kike's Thor had gone completely still, his scientific worldview crumbling around him. All this time, he whispered, we thought unpredictability was a weakness. We sought perfect order, perfect understanding. But you primitive humans, we embraced the chaos. Dr. Patel nodded. Turned our supposed limitations into advantages. And we did it all while maintaining a very convincing facade of being really into bananas. The network of dimensional gateways pulsed again, and through them came images of other realities, other possibilities, all the things the Council had tried to keep hidden behind their false universal constant. So, Zenna addressed the stunned delegation. Should we discuss humanity's new role in galactic society? I'm thinking something along the lines of leaders in dimensional physics and creative problem-solving, though we're open to suggestions. As long as they don't include the words primitive or monkey unless we're the ones saying it, because, let's face it, we've earned that right. In that moment, as the Council representatives stared at the impossible made possible by human ingenuity and spite, the balance of power in the galaxy shifted. Humanity had not only broken the universe's biggest rule, they'd proven that sometimes the best way to advance was to question why the rules existed in the first place. And they'd done it all while maintaining a completely straight face about their banana storage operations. The universe would never be the same. Neither would the Galactic Council's filing system for agricultural facilities. 1 month after the quantum banana incident, as it was now being called throughout the galaxy, Dr. Zenna Blackwood stood before the reformed Galactic Council. The chamber looked different now. Representatives from formerly primitive species filled seats that had once been reserved for the self-proclaimed advanced races. And so she concluded her presentation. Earth proposes the establishment of the Interdimensional Research Coalition, open to all species regardless of their fruit storage capabilities. But the Centaurian delegate, whose species had spent centuries being patronized about their simple understanding of physics, chittered in approval. We second this motion and offer our quantum mathematics expertise, which we've been quietly developing in our vegetable preservation units. Kike's Thor, now serving as a scientific advisor rather than a superior being, raised a humbled tentacle. The evidence is irrefutable. Humanity's approach to dimensional physics has opened possibilities we never imagined. Though I still don't understand why you maintained the banana charade even after succeeding. Because Dr. Patel grinned from his seat among Earth's delegation, it was funny. Sometimes that's reason enough. Representatives from a dozen primitive species had approached Earth with their own breakthroughs, hidden away under centuries of condescension. The Arcturians had developed quantum telepathy while pretending to study grain storage. The Proxima Centaurians had cracked temporal mechanics in their simple hydroponics facilities. You know what the best part is, Zenna mused, watching Admiral Vextral's crystalline form shimmer with embarrassment. We're still technically following the Council's original regulations. The banana storage facilities are still storing bananas. We're just also using them to punch holes in reality. The chamber erupted in appreciative laughter, the kind that comes from centuries of waiting to say "I told you so." As the new coalition took shape, establishing protocols for shared research and development, Dr. Blackwood couldn't resist one final address to the former council leadership. Turns out these space monkeys had a few tricks up their sleeves. Though I suppose we're not really space monkeys anymore, are we? More like quantum primates. Dimensional apes. Reality-bending banana enthusiasts. She paused thoughtfully. Actually, I think we'll keep the space monkey title. We've earned it, and it has a certain charm. Besides, it'll be a good reminder never to underestimate anyone based on their supposed limitations. The Dimensional Gateway Network, now expanding across the galaxy, pulsed with the combined knowledge of dozens of species finally free to share their innovations. Earth had become a hub of interdimensional research, though they steadfastly refused to rename their facilities anything more impressive than advanced banana storage and reality manipulation centers. Some called it the dawn of a new age. Others called it the inevitable result of telling humans they couldn't do something. But everyone agreed on one thing: the universe was a much more interesting place now that the space monkeys had learned to swim in the quantum waves. And somewhere in a lab still officially registered as a fruit storage facility, Aria 7 updated Earth's status in the Galactic database. Species classification still technically space monkeys, but now with dimensional physics doctorates. Current status laughing all the way to the quantum bank. Banana storage capacity infinite across multiple dimensions.